Welcome back to travelwithoutpat.com through South America. Episode 6 takes us into Peru. We've now done 7 weeks of traveling, about 8,000 kilometers, starting in Montevideo, going right up to Lago Titicaca. In this episode we are going to go to the iconic Inca ruins at Machu Picchu. Before getting there we have to cross the Bolivian-Peru border. Bolivia not as friendly as on the very efficient Peruvian side. We are heading towards the first major city, Puno, but before we get there we deviate onto the peninsula Soca to have a good look along Lago Titicaca. The weather being warm and picture perfect, and us enjoying the ruralness of this peninsula, we found ourselves a little spot to have lunch and then decide to stay for the night.
Arrive at Butow Point.
To find some of these places we use the application iOverlander, which is a good travel companion to find places to stay with comments of previous travelers in the area.
Erzähl, dann stelle ich mir so ähnlich ganz anders als Kiefern oder irgendwas.
Next morning we take a round trip around the area before heading back to the main road towards Puno. Puno is the second largest city in Peru. We make our way to our accommodation Casa Pangarani, run by Edgar and Consuelo, where Edgar arranges a parking lot where we can keep the vehicles overnight. Unbeknown to us, there was a public holiday and we found quite a lot of festivities in town. Our first impressions were that Peru in this part of the country was very clean and all the old buildings kept in very good condition. The theme of these festivities were traffic and traffic safety, and it looked like schools and a variety of bands participated. The main reason for our stop in Puno was to visit the Islas de los Uros, which are living, floating islands on which people live in the traditional way. When stepping off the boat, it is something to get used to. The ground is not firm but floating under your feet, as everything is built on living
zur
reeds.
Hausbesichtigung.
Today the people on the floating islands derive their income mainly from tourism and less from fishing like it might have been in the olden days.
Martín, ¿qué tal, hermano?
Spent a lovely day out on Lago Titicaca and then returned to the shore side where a very spontaneous race by taxi started between Uwe and Almut and ourselves. The two taxi drivers wanted to see who gets us back to the Casa Pangarani first. Chase ended up being rather hectic. We left reasonably early from Puno and took the road past Juliaca and Sicuani towards Cusco. We realized in Peru there is no slow driving. Drivers take a lot of chances when overtaking, especially also the minibuses.
Oh Gott, fahren die alle schrecklich. Jesus, jetzt kommen wir mitten in den Scheißverkehr rein.
We speedily found our way through Juliaca, albeit that the GPSs misled us as usual, but we're getting pretty used to that.
3 south.
We went through Bukhara, which also has an archaeological site dating back 1800 BC, but we gave it a miss. The town is apparently also known for its ceramics, but we had our day cut out to get to Cusco.
Das ist eine BMW.
Wo kommen die her? Ah, Veterinaria. Steht da. Ach, ist ja süß. Guck mal, diese ganzen Sachen.
Mhm.
Ja.
When we finally reached Cusco, it wasn't easy to find camping Quintalala, which is right on top of the mountain, well situated, and one can walk down into town into the evenings. As we've had so often in the past days, the GPS gave us the runaround, even suggesting at one point that we could take the steps and climb, just because we ended up in a very small alleyway where we could not go further. A bonus of this was that we actually rounded the Plaza de Armas once, which one would normally not enter by car but only on foot.
So, und jetzt müssen wir das anders reinkommen.
Feel free to climb here. Nein, das wollen wir nicht.
Finally, we got closer to the camping site right on top of the mountain next to the Citadel Sacsayhuaman, and Millie took us in. There was space. The camping site is quite nice, albeit that the ablution and kitchen is somewhat limited. However, in the mornings we could order freshly squeezed orange juice, and Millie would collect fresh eggs from her hens that roamed around the camping site.
So, heute Morgen fahren wir mal raus an die...
Cusco is well situated to explore some other towns in the area, and we drove down to Chinchero, which has this fantastic craft market.
Sonne.
Was kosten die denn, bitte?
Ich habe keine Ahnung.
Fragst du doch mal, die sind wirklich süß.
Und der kostet? 30.
Fisch. Ja, süß. Diesen hier finde ich ganz süß. Den muss man vielleicht fest. Muss man wieder fest.
No problema. Eso...
Die sind niedlich, ne? Das ist da Filz drauf gestickt, oder?
Mhm.
Grimalda. Grimalda.
Grimalda hat die gemacht. The intricate rosettes on the heads of the ladies indicate from which village they come.
Da kann ich den Schlafsack nicht ausnehmen.
In Chinchero are more ruins which we briefly visited, and while being there the church service ended and the elders were coming out. After a nice lunch in Urubamba, we carry on in the direction of Pisac, but unfortunately we arrived too late to view the ruins in that town or above that town, and decided to come back at a later stage. The Incas built this citadel above Cusco in the 1300s. It was an arms storage and a site for sacrifices. The temple and other buildings were below in Cusco. Pizarro and his men plundered both Sacsayhuaman and the temples of Cusco, and then built their own structures and cathedrals on top of the foundations, and removed all the rock from the citadel to build buildings and structures in Cusco. We enjoyed strolling around Cusco, enjoying the varied architecture and the old cathedrals, and then stocked up at the local fresh produce market, which is opposite a very convenient supermercado to shop. Next morning we left around about 10 o'clock from the travel agent's office. First went down to Ollantaytambo to catch the train, which took us to Agua Calientes, the village at the foot of Machu Picchu. Agua Calientes is quite a touristic little town with hot thermas. We had a fantastic supper and enjoyed the evening before very early next morning we got up to catch the bus which left at 6 o'clock. Getting up early and catching the first bus gave us some fantastic views at sunrise of the ruins on top of the mountain. While Uwe, Almut and Karen joined a guide on a tour around the ruins themselves, I made my way up further towards the Sun Gate to take some panoramic views at first light. At the temple on top we again witnessed the incredible masonry works of the Incas when this town or village was built in this remote location. The Incas, through their terraces, could plant what they needed and were more or less self-sufficient in this location.
And also we're gonna go to the Condor Temple.
On a few of the houses, the roofs were restored, so that gives a good idea how the Incas lived at the time. There is no gap between the stonework. It's incredible with rudimentary tools how these stone structures were built. There are sheer cliffs down to the Urubamba River, which flows around this citadel on the bottom. This is a view from the Sun Gate, which is the entrance from on the Inca Trail arriving at Machu Picchu, and the fantastic view that the trailists have when they arrive here. Being one of the most popular World Heritage sites in the world, there are quite a few tourists that visit every day. However, many tourists are handled very well by the authorities. The bus service is extremely punctual and well organized, so it will remain a highlight on our trip. Once we were back in Cusco, we had our vehicles serviced at the campsite quite efficiently. Since Uwe and Almut could only do 3 months stints, the time had come to say farewell, as they had to travel back to Montevideo over the next 4 weeks while we carried on.
Turn right.
At Quinta Lala campsite in Cusco, we had met Bernd and Marion Frauendorfer and decided to do a 2-day trip into the Rainbow Mountains, a tourist site that was busy being developed and had been discovered 2 years before. At Pitumarca, we turned off and followed a very narrow mountainous path which takes you directly to the site from where the trail starts. Since the trail at the Rainbow Mountains is offered by the travel operators as a 1-day excursion, there are many buses leaving before sunrise to get up to the trail on time to complete it by about lunchtime. So we left a little bit later, trying to avoid all the rush going up to the site, and we did not encounter too much oncoming traffic. The trip gave us some insight into the remote rural life of the population in this region. We were fascinated up to what altitude on these mountains people are cultivating crops, mainly on terraces which have been cleared, and a lot of them already built during the Inca time. After about 180 kilometers, we arrive at the parking lot at an altitude of almost 4,300 meters.
Du musst, glaube ich, so hoch.
Ja, das stimmt mit den Koordinaten genau überein.
Ja, aber die Piste geht weiter. Das ist nicht schlau. Erstmal da oben hinstellen.
Once the tourist buses had left, we decided to park a little bit further down and got ready to camp and enjoy the surroundings. As the sun was setting, it was getting cold, and we knew that we would probably have a freezing night. A -5 degree, very chilly but clear morning greeted us to get ready for the trail. Wie fühlst du dich denn? Okay. The trail to the mountains is approximately 12 kilometers, and the altitude goes from 4,200 meters to 4,800 meters.
I have 100 tourists and I need to pay.
It is a very rewarding but strenuous trek up to the top. Some do it by horse, not a bad idea. Finally we reached the summit and had a good view of the Rainbow Mountains.
So, habt ihr es geschafft? 4800.
On the way down we were overtaken by a lot of younger people. Going down the knees suffer a lot and we took it very slow. Towards late afternoon we finally arrived back at the vehicles and got ready for a nice supper and a good night's sleep. In the background the 6,384 meter Nevado Ausangate mountain is visible. Next morning again a chilly wake-up call and we made our way back to Cusco. Going back to Cusco, we had to take the same very narrow and treacherous road back.
Na ihr? Wo wollt ihr denn hin?
Ich gehe denn hier vorbei, wenn wir hier gehen. Was versteht?
The main obstacles were some agricultural obstacles like llamas and trucks, and then we were afraid that some more tourist buses would come along the way going up to the trail. Fortunately we had left at a time the traffic was very low.
Ich weiß auch nicht, wie alt die Leute werden. Das ist immer ganz schwierig zu schätzen, wie alt sind solche Leute.
In the morning there was more activities in the little villages which kept the return journey very interesting.
Hat er sich den Dinges gemacht. Wir bauen da ein Haus, da macht er erstmal so eine Linie jetzt, wo das Haus hinkommt. Oh.
Was sagst du, was ich nicht verstehe?
In 7 kilometers, turn left onto CU 124.
Ist fine.
After about 2 hours we were back in Cusco. We hope you've enjoyed episode 6 with us. Next time around we take you to the vibrant religious festival at Paucatambo and subsequently into the Amazon jungle at Maldonado. See you then. We thank Rainer Buhr for making his music available for our video series.